Hello, and welcome to my library. Let me show you around a little bit. This is a medal that I got whenever I decided to cross-country ski a half marathon through the Arctic Circle in Finland. Fun fact, I had never cross-country skied before, but I was a Division One cross-country athlete in college, and I grew up skiing, so I figured I had about 20 kilometers to figure it out. I was definitely one of the last place finalists, but I got the medal, and while I was in Finland, I was a true finisher. Let's see, what else do we have here? Oh, this is a sombrero that I got whenever I was 15. I entered in through a speech competition, and I won, and I was able to go to Mexico City and give presentations really all throughout the city, and so I got this sombrero while I was there. And oh, this is a football because I am from Oklahoma, which you might know for a few different reasons. One might be our love of Saturday college football. See, I was actually the president of the University of Oklahoma in Tulsa, and I was able to go to the Orange Bowl whenever I was president there on New Year's Eve. If you aren't from the U.S., you might know of Oklahoma for a few different reasons. Some of you might know Oklahoma from old school westerns, Cowboys and Indians or Native Americans. Some of you might know of Oklahoma as that place that Chandler went in season 8 of Friends. Some of you, while you've been watching watching TV during quarantine, might know us as that place where this guy named Tiger King is from. I'll be honest, I had no idea where that place is in Oklahoma, but apparently it's in my state, so that's something that many Oklahomans learned together as well. Now, why do I share these random facts about me, myself, and this library? Well, that's because just because we are not in the same proximity, just because we're not in the same place, doesn't mean that we can't share parts of ourself and different parts of our personality. See, it can be so easy in this remote time to take the human, take the person, take that relationship out of our workplace and of our workforce. But by doing little activities like this, where we are able to continue to share in our relationships, we're able to build that connection, and we're able to keep the human in human resources. See, I actually am a seasoned HR professional, but we believe that human resources is not using humans as resources. Rather, it's the other way around. And we are providing resources to humans to be successful. And see, it's so important in this time that we create an environment where people can have the resources, have the tools, but also have a landscape and an environment where they can truly be successful and they can perform at their highest level. I've had many leaders ask me about performance feedback and having those performance metrics and how we are communicating and measuring performance in this time. But I believe that it's important that we first take the time to create an environment of great performance. See, a few years ago, I actually left my job in corporate HR and in corporate America to become the only American, the only female, the only Christian, and the only blonde academy football coach, or soccer coach, for the Adidas Game Day Academies and Paris Saint-Germain, PSG Academies, in Bangalore, India, to coach widely the first generation of athletes on both an elite and a grassroots level. I coached about a dozen teams, mostly boys with a few girls, ages 6 to about 16. And as I got off the plane, I discovered that our team was operating under a very command-obey dynamic. See, our players, they would come and they would stand in a line, kick a ball, wait for direction. And they would come to our sessions and they would stand in a line, kick a ball, wait for instruction. And they would come to our lessons and they would stand in a line, kick a ball, wait for feedback. See, this was a very transactional relationship. It was a very contractual relationship. And in the same way, if we take out the human side of our teams and of our organizations, we too can have more of a transactional relationship. I come, I kick the ball, I wait for instruction. And what we found in the game scenario is that our players, within the course of a game, would kick the ball perfectly, exactly the way that we taught them. And then before the play was even over, they would turn to the sideline to the coach for further direction and feedback. They had mastered the task, but they didn't understand how it applied to the overall game scenario. It might be easy to think of this as a foreign academy in sports with kids, but how often do we go to work, receive a task, and wait for instruction? And it's oftentimes in these scenarios that we hear words like leadership and creativity and collaboration and innovation, because we know that these are really good words. But it's important that we first take the time to lay a foundation for great performance within our team. See, we had to transform our academy from lines and laps and lectures to one of creativity and collaboration and captainship. And the first thing that we had to do was stop. Stop commanding the how and start clearly communicating the what and the why. In application, it looked a little something like this. Rather than stand in a line, kick a ball, wait for instruction, we would provide challenges. So from here, kick the ball to knock down those 3 cones. Because in order to do that, you're going to have to kick with power and precision. And in a game scenario, whenever you pass, whenever you kick, whenever you shoot, you're also going to have to kick with power and precision. From challenges like these, I saw some of the most heated debates I'd ever seen amongst 7-year-olds, trying to decide if the best way to kick the ball was with the infoot or with the laces. In reality, both ways were right. And so we were able to expand the toolbox of resources for our players. And while this is talking about football and soccer specifically, there was actually a study done by Creative Differences that found that teams that had leaders that clearly communicated their mission had a 20% higher likelihood of success within their projects. In the same regard, teams that felt more comfortable challenging the status quo had a 16.7% less likelihood of failure rate within their projects. See, this is really important because we must first identify what we are doing, why we are doing it. We must identify the problem that we're actually solving, identifying the goal that we're working towards. See, if you want an answer, you'll probably find an answer. But if we don't identify if we don't ask the right questions, then the answer that you receive might not be the solution that you're actually looking for. Communicate clearly the what and the why, and provide space within the how. So they clearly knew to kick the ball to knock down those 3 cones. But our players had to identify how they were going to do that. Now, obviously, with these opportunities for ownership actually came a greater opportunity for conflict. See, with a greater opportunity for ownership comes a greater opportunity for conflict, but it also comes a greater opportunity for conversation over complacency. Ooh, that's good. I'll say it again. With greater opportunity for ownership comes greater opportunity for conflict. But that also is opportunity for conversation over complacency. We didn't just want to create an environment that was going to create more tension and more conflict and not equip our players to be able to handle this conflict more effectively. And so we actually worked with our players on how to engage in healthy collaboration and in healthy conflict. And this really began first by having these proactive conversations. Now, a proactive conversation is really simple. It really means that at the beginning of a project, at the beginning of a new team dynamic, at the beginning of whenever I work with a new client, I will come in and I will have a frank conversation where I say, listen, at some point in this project, I'm going to fail you. At some point in this relationship, there is going to be conflict. There's going to be tension. There's going to be heat. And so while the emotions are low now, let us discuss how we are going to handle this conflict. The emotions are low now. Let's set an expectation and set a game plan of what we're going to do. This does a couple things. First, it clears the air of, it sets an expectation of conflict. And so whenever tension arises, this isn't something out of the blue. It's actually expected that we would have this conflict. So it sets a normalcy to tension. And the second thing it does is it sets a game plan for how you're going to handle that tension in the future. And so you already have a script that you have both agreed to operate on. And this is really, really powerful whenever helping your teams and equipping your teams to be successful whenever they are going through collaboration and creative measures. And it also helps prevent against one of the biggest obstacles to great performance feedback and to great performance. And that is the fundamental attribution error. Now, the fundamental attribution error is really just a fancy way of saying that so often we judge other people by their actions while we judge ourselves by our intentions. I'll give you an example. I was working with a person on our team that always sent her emails in all caps. And so it appeared to us that she was yelling and that she was shouting and that she was angry at the team. But her intent was to put it in a bigger font so that it could be more clearly seen. So she was actually trying to make her message more visible or more legible so that people could see it. But the way that we interpreted it was, the way that many of the team members interpreted it as, was shouting and anger and yelling. And so rather than letting this situation brew up, we actually were able to talk and say, hey, what was your intention whenever you did that? And so she was able to explain her intention. And so we were able to come at the situation with more of a coaching and an understanding aspect. See, here we're able to identify a knowledge gap between intention and behavior. We're able to coach to bring the two closer together. This happens quite frequently with team members. I had a team member that I was working with in an organization that the team member came off in meetings as very abrupt and abrasive and somewhat malicious, but his intent was to come off with passion and enthusiasm and to be convincing. And so there was a knowledge gap. And so rather than saying, hey, quit being abrupt and abrasive, we were able to first ask, what was your intention whenever you did that? So we were able to identify that knowledge gap and then create a more of a coaching relationship to create a better, healthier working dynamic. And see, this was really, really important, especially whenever we were working within our collaborative measures and being very creative. See, again, with that opportunity for ownership is going to come that opportunity for conflict. And so we must prepare our team members to have a healthy approach to those different dynamics. One powerful thing that I do within teams is get a snapshot of the dynamic of the team. Now, you can do this differently if you are at a brick and mortar traditional building, if your team is all in the same place, or if you are remote and working virtually. If you are working virtually, you can ask questions within a Zoom meeting, such as, do you prefer phone communication? Do you prefer text communication? Are you a night person? Are you a morning person? And you can have people literally just lean to sides of the screen, and if you put it on gallery view, you can get a real snapshot of, oh, most people here are very analytical, or most people in our team are very visionary and see big picture. Some people on our team are very comfortable with handling conflict. Most of our team is not comfortable at all. And this is a very safe space that you can get a snapshot view of. As a leader, you can see the type of leader that is most preferred and within this team dynamic, and that might be the most effective within that team dynamic. Another powerful activity that I do within teams is I have every team pull out a post-it card or an index card and write down a few of the strengths that they believe that they can bring to the team on one side, and then flip it over and on the other side write strengths that you really hope is somebody else's strength within the team. So this is a way that you can truly see how people can complement each other, but then also maybe some areas of conflict. I know for me personally, I am a huge visionary, big picture type of person, but I know that I really rely on somebody else within our team, or really hope that there is somebody else in our team that is very good with the strategy and the follow-up and the details. And I know that we will complement each other very, very well. We also might have some tension and some conflict because our strengths are complementary but also very different. And so you're able to be even more specific within those proactive conversations by getting a snapshot of the team dynamics. And so that's a really powerful way that you can just be proactive in having those conversations and truly see maybe in the ways that your team can be most creative and be most effective in their collaboration efforts. Now, we talked a little bit about different types of communication and people's preferences. I want to expand on that a little bit more. So oftentimes the message within the communication is perfectly fine. There's a lot of time and effort and intentionality on the message, but the method of delivering that message is so often forgotten. And especially within remote teams and virtual teams, it is so critical that we take the time to be intentional in identifying the best method of communication. There is a spectrum, so to speak, of the types of messages that we deliver whenever we are at work. And if we have a message that is more informational, definitely something that could be doesn't need to be a meeting, it could be an email, doesn't really even warrant a response, then sending a text or a memo or an email is totally fine. But as you move more into emotional messaging or more complicated messaging, it is critical that we take a moment to identify the best method of delivering that communication. Generally, whenever I work within teams, we identify one of the best ways to decide if I should pick up the phone or send an email is to ask the question of how many emails it takes to answer this question or to find a solution before it's important to pick up the phone. It's important to meet with your team and to decide upon a number. So with most teams, it's about 5 to 6 emails. So if I'm going back and forth every single time, then there's going to be a level of emotion that builds. In fact, this reminds me of a love letter. This is actually a yearbook from 1942, and it has a number of different letters inside of it, many written to my great grandmother. And here is one right here, written to her by a man named Otis. It reads this: "Fall off the roof, fall down the cellar, but don't fall in love with another feller. Otis." See, love letters are so powerful. It's a powerful form of communication. And it's powerful for a few different ways. One is the amount of time it takes to write the letter, the intentionality with the words. But I believe one of the greatest reasons why love letters are so effective is the span of time between each letter being received. See, that letter was written in my great grandmother's yearbook, but there are many other letters written by Mr. Otis throughout my great grandmother's life, and there is a span of time between each letter for the words to sink in. And this is highly desired if you are writing a love letter and you want the affection, you want the emotion of affection to build. But if we are sending emails, then something that is not really emotional messaging at all can become very emotional because of the method and the time, the span of time between each message that we've sent for emotion to build. So it's really important that we take the time to be mindful of the type of messaging that we are using. If you have a message that is very personal or has the potential to become emotional, it is vital that we take a moment to to have a phone call, to have a Zoom meeting, preferably have person to person. Though I understand in this season that might not be possible, but really try and get as personal as you can in that feedback. So we've talked a lot about dealing, managing conflict, about being proactive in creating a high-performing environment. But how do we actually become creative and innovative in our teams? See, it's within these situations that we actually take a moment to identify the problem. See, innovation and creativity really comes down to three major types of problem solving. Innovation is problem solving. It's a creative way to solve problems. And so the types of problems that we're solving could be fixing an existing problem. So there could be something that is wrong that we need to fix. It could be improving on an existing service or product or performance. So there isn't necessarily something wrong, but we need to continuously improve so that we can stay competitive and we can stay relevant. And then the third type of innovation is to create something totally new that hasn't been seen before. And so if we're able to identify, again, we're asking the right questions, we're identifying what we're doing and why we're doing it, and then we provide those opportunities within the how, and our team is now equipped to handle highly creative situations and able to collaborate in an effective manner, then we'll be able to truly come up with great ideas and share our ideas in a meaningful way. Now, I talked a little bit about having those different dynamics within your team and identifying who is a morning person, who is a night person, who prefers, who is comfortable in handling conflict, who is not. So there's a lot of different snapshots that you can get. A powerful snapshot that I generally take is those that are more quick thinking. They want to come up with a lot of ideas all at once. And those that are a little bit more strategic and analytical. And they will come up with very quality, well thought out ideas, but it might take a couple more days rather than the quick thinking. People will generally come up with 30 different ideas, none of them fully thought out, but we're going to get them all out very quickly. That's generally me. And then you have people that will come up with maybe 10 ideas a day later, but they will all be very clearly thought out. And so I've worked with a number of different teams that have these various dynamics. And so what I generally do is, if I have the ability, I will send out an email a couple days before, and I will let the team members know what we're brainstorming on, what problem we're going to be solving, and you can begin thinking about those ideas now. And then we all come together and we can share our ideas. There's a few different tools that I use. Honestly, one of the best ones that I use is Slack. So we'll take 90 seconds, a couple minutes, we will write everything down, take a picture of what we've written down, and then post it in Slack. And then people can start threads and brainstorming off of that and building off of, oh, I like what I like what Carlos said. I like what Susie said. I like what all of these other people said within my team. That way, you're able to be very effective in the way that you are collaborating and communicating. Whenever I'm with a physical team, I will use whiteboards, we'll use sticky notes. There's a variety of different resources that we can use to get all of our ideas all out at once. You'll notice in almost all of these scenarios, I am talking about writing everything down first, and that is because in many team dynamics, there are more vocal and louder team members, such as myself, that have the possibility of maybe overpowering some other team members that have just as quality ideas that might not be as vocal or as they might be a little bit more quiet. And so by putting everything on a more equal playing field, such as post-it notes or whiteboards, then you're able to provide a little bit more merit to each of the ideas that are being brought forth. And so you can be very deliberate in the way that you are collaborating within your team. Now, we've talked a lot about creativity and collaboration. Now I really want to talk about captainship. See, captainship really boils down, especially in this remote time, back to the beginning of this session, and that is relationship building and sharing parts of yourself, and then asking and being intentional about building relationships with others. See, in this very unique time, the number one thing that people are looking for in new team members is adaptability, but the number two factor is empathy. I'm the founder of a group called the Pathways Group, where we work with organizations all over the world in building, in training in effective leadership and team building and strategic human resources. And we believe that everybody gets somewhere, but few people get there on purpose. And so we help people find the pathway towards their desired destination. And in the same regard, great relationships happen, but great relationships don't just happen by accident. It takes a level of intentionality and purposeful action. And so whenever you are leading a team, whether it be remotely or in person, it is critical. It is vital. Humans are not an asset. Your employees are not an asset. They are a necessity. They are a necessity to your success. And so it is absolutely crucial that we take the time to build the relationships with those in our teams, and to truly be very intentional in that relationship building. So for some people, that's having virtual coffee hours or happy hours. Some are having theme days within their Zoom meetings. Some are sending care packages. There are a variety of different ways that you can be very intentional about showing the way that you care and building relationships within your team. See, whenever I was coaching football in India, or soccer in India, I was coaching one very young lad, and it was his very first day of football. His name was Achintya, and he was 6 years old. And on his first day, he came running out onto the field, and he began yelling, "Pass! Pass! Pass!" And Achintya was yelling pass even whenever the other team had the ball. And he was yelling pass whenever he was miles away from the action. And he was yelling pass even whenever he had the ball. And so he was running with the ball, going, "Pass! Pass! Pass!" And so I looked at Achintya and I said, "Achintya, why are you yelling pass?" And he looked up at me and he said, "Miss Embermom, I do not know what it means. I only know it is a football word." See, sometimes leaders sound a little bit like my friend Achintya, yelling leadership, teamwork, collaboration, cooperation, collaboration, innovation, you got this! Because we know that these are really big words that can lead to big goals. But if we're in the wrong position, if we're miles away from the action, or even if we have the ball and we don't know in which direction we're going, then yelling these words are not only ineffective, but they're actually detrimental to our overall communication. But if we take the time to build relationships with people in our team, if we equip our team with the right resources and tools to be successful. And if we are intentional to build an environment where people can truly thrive, then we can yell pass, receive the ball, move forward, and score really big goals.